Well, I'd like to welcome you all to this, as he said, approximately 8th annual run of the Archaeology Canoe Tour in the Taunton River Basin. October is Archaeology Month in Massachusetts, and so the posters that I gave out are the official Mass Historical Commission posters for that. There are many other events associated with Archaeology Month. You can obtain a brochure on that from the Mass Historical Commission in Boston. They're accessible through the Secretary of State's website. So I think it's massstate.gov or something like that. But in any event, you can certainly find that. People have been looking at these sites for a very long time. The Mass Archaeological Society was founded in 1939, and one of its first official activities was to delegate a group of amateur archaeologists who were knowledgeable in each of the areas of the state to go out and create an inventory of archaeological sites. And so in the 1940s, that is one of the things that happened. And many sites were recorded by these people who knew the local areas. Unfortunately, in many cases, all that they recorded about the site was its presence. There are certain types of plant communities that provide various useful things for people, which would include foods, but also materials for making reed mats. So, for example, cattails provide excellent material with their stalks for making reed mats, and the cattail heads can be dried, ground up into a flour, and made something like a bread. And I understand the cattail roots are also edible. So there are a number of edible plants that would focus around the river. But that's not all about where we are, because I don't know that you can see this from here, but we are not far from the point at which the South Brook comes into this river. And this is the town river, as we call it today, but we know that the native name was Nunkatusset, and there is now a group which has its roots on our campus as well as in the community that is working to preserve what's called the Nunkatusset Greenway. Is anyone here from that group? No, okay. Well, there is a Nunkatusset Greenway Preservation Association that is active in both West Bridgewater and Bridgewater for preserving green space on either side of the river. And so that's something you might want to know more about if you're interested in that sort of thing. Okay, so the rivers are also means of transportation. They were, for Native Americans, highways, because they didn't have wheeled vehicles, and aside from walking on foot along trails, they would... The Tusset River will get you all the way up to the Nunkatusset and other ponds in the area, so that it's a natural means of transportation. The Taunton River is an even more important one, and as we will see when we get to it, the Matfield River is also an important transportation corridor. More than that, up that way I guess, is the highest point of land in the town of Bridgewater, which is where the water tower is. It is today called Great Hill. Okay, everybody familiar with that? Great Hill? Okay, it's basically the high hill that's on the edge of the Bridgewater campus. And in earlier documents, it is referred to as Indian Hill. Up until the second decade of the 19th century, at least part of that land was still owned by the Paquin family, which Paquin is a native name. So that was held on to. And one of the reasons it's held on to is because it is such a high eminence. And in fact, native people used those high sites for observations of important points in the calendar, particularly the solstices. There is, in fact, a solstice marker site up on the hill, which I've discovered, which would allow you to get both summer solstice and winter solstice, because it's basically a pair of rocks that's, maybe this high, split apart, if you look through, that's a natural split. If you look through that, you are looking at, or would have been looking at winter solstice sunset. We've actually gone out there in summer solstice and confirmed that that will give you a straight line right to summer solstice. And one of the interesting things is that between that and the split stone, there's an aquifer running. So these two things mark the edges of an aquifer. So there's interesting stuff going on. So there's ceremonial sites as well as habitation sites in this area. So these are some of the things that we run across when we look at the sites. So we're going to get onto the river, and our first actual stop, we're going to go downriver as far as the match field, and then we're going to hang a left into the match field. And the reason I want to do that, in addition to the fact that there are sites there, yeah, is that I want you to take a look. I'm not going to tell you what you're going to see, but I want you to take a look at the water in the Matfield River as compared to what you will have seen up till then in this river. And then we'll talk a little bit about that. We will be going to a site after that, which I've actually excavated on for a number of years, and I'll give you, we'll get out of the canoes at that point, and I'll give you a talk, then we'll have lunch, and then we'll continue on downstream and pass by a number of other known sites. And we might stop at one of them, possibly. So, any questions? Okay, let's get out on the water then. Okay, you can see the distinction between the two kinds of water, the slightly polluted, darker water of the Town River and the clearer water of the Matfield. Now, the Matfield is a major corridor for native people because you can go up this and come to places, but with a very few portages, you can get over into the headwaters of the North River, which will get you out to the coast at Scituate and Marshfield. And also from there, not at the coast, but following other tributaries, up to the Weymouth back and Four Rivers, and will take you up to Boston Harbor. This was a natural waterway, inland waterway, that was used by native people for at least 9,000 years. And the way we know that is because the sites that have been found along this waterway, going all the way up into the area of Weymouth, have archaeological remains that relate to periods that go back that far. And I'll talk about that more when we actually get out of the canoes. When we think about sites, what we find is that they come in several different sizes and scales. And so you have some small temporary campsites, probably like the where we started out, and some somewhat longer term sites that are